Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very interesting guest with me today, and that is Justin Lewis. Now, Justin runs a think tank in the United Kingdom, which has potentially uncovered proof that South Africa knew about the October 7th massacre in Israel prior to the event occurring. Hello, Justin, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Byron. I'm happy to be here.
So, we were talking prior to pushing recording. So you run an organization which effectively uncovers abuse of the court systems, and where the court systems are basically weaponized in order for certain, let's call them special interest projects. And I believe that during one of your investigations, you came across some evidence that potentially South Africa knew about the October 7th incident. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Well, it was more than that. My involvement is not, we're a lobby group whose purpose is the prevention of the corruption of courts. And I was asked by the UK's Serious Fraud Office to engage the South African government on a corruption matter. And from that engagement, witnesses came forward which indicated that the South African government had prepared for the aftermath of the October the 7th before it actually had taken place. In other words, it had prepared the legal groundwork for the aftermath from Israel's response. Now, that in the International Court of Justice purpose is not the promotion of Hamas propaganda. The international purpose of the International Court is to deal with issues that have arisen, such as the issue of genocide. But if one allows this practice of preparation, which is at best cynical, it's an abuse of the court procedure, and as a result, if the applications were prepared prior to the attack in preparation for the outcome thereof, then the application would have to be withdrawn on those technical grounds. It's got nothing to do with the merits of the application, but entirely on court procedure. It's a bit like, to explain to the layman, it's a bit like helping your neighbor burn his house down and then rushing to the court to claim insurance for the damage that you participated in creating. It's not going to fly. Your insurance claim will be rejected. And Hamas is not a signatory to the ICJ. Nor is it a state. So this method of seeking international recognition is unacceptable and unlawful. And that's the one issue. The other repercussion of this conduct, which is, I think I sent you a brief for the security of President Trump, for his visit in Ayrshire, where I am based. And it deals with his security now. As a result of the recent fatwa by Iranian officials against President Trump, as a result of the 12-day Iranian war, when America bombed their nuclear facilities, that fatwa is taken very seriously. But the people that I meet with here every day are often highly influential Americans that give us a picture of the true feeling in Washington and its relationship with South Africa. I'm a dual national. I'm a South African and UK citizen, and I'm an honorary citizen of the United States. So I have three different hats that I have to wear to if I'm concerned about all those interests. And I'm particularly a huge fan of South Africa, and in fact a fan of President Ramaphosa, who is its South African president. But the question I've been asked continually here, and as defined in their brief, is that if President Ramaphosa knew about that attack, preparations by the South African government prior to the attack, then that would place him under President Trump's Executive Order 14204, which addresses hostile and anti-Semitic conduct by the Republic of South Africa, which has already been approved under the Promoting Security and Justice for Victims of Terrorism in the US. And they've done this because from my engagements, the Americans are very, very, very angry for the murder of their citizens, and anybody who participated or was seen to be participating in such actions are going to be dealt with. with punitive damages, which include, in this case, that has come to my attention, a $400 million claim against the president himself. And these are issues that are taken very personally by the American interest groups that I work with and meet with. And the issue, as per that the fatwa, is the South African president linked to agents that seek the death of the president himself, President Trump? These are very serious issues, and they have the serious implications for the South African economy, because not least of these is proposed legislation which has already been passed in the US Congress for sanctions against South Africa, and particularly agents in South Africa that they see were part of the words used, for example, are misused international courts to attack Israel is one of the claims. Now cannot be more directly pointed to the issue we're discussing. It's clear that despite what one reads in the press, that the impression given is that the Trump administration is going to make an example of South Africa. And one of those examples, besides sanctions, and particularly sanctions on government debt, is extremely worrying, because that might well add the cost of financing government debt in South Africa to the taxpayer of a billion a day, rand a day, or ZAR a day. But over and above those risks is the risk to the president himself, because he might find himself being sued for the $400 million from victims of the terrorism. And that, as I understand it, is designed to send a clear message that leaders of countries that are seen to be have placed themselves as enemies of the people of America in playing a part in the deaths of UK citizens or fatwas against President Trump will pay a heavy price. And that's where I'm involved, because I was asked if is anything we can do to ensure that the circumstance can be improved upon. I sent a recommendation to the president's office with the hope of beginning some kind of dialogue that would take this risk of enormously damaging consequences for the South African economy, if not crippling. That's over and above the trade tariff situation of 30%, and that's over and above the end of the AGOA trade agreement with South Africa, also going by the wayside. So the economic consequences are dire unless the new South African government, which is now known as the Government of National Unity, can intervene in some way and win back the favor of the US and the Trump administration. But in order for that to happen, actions would have to be taken by the South African government, and there appears no sign on the horizon that is going to happen. In fact, I read an article last week where President Ramaphosa appeared bemused as to the extent of the anger by the Trump administration against the South African government, and it appears he hasn't yet got the message. And the message I'm getting clearly here is that they are angry. They are angry that there appears to be a collusion to in their own words, misuse international court, aka the International Court of Justice, and that the fatwa against President Trump on his life is taken very personally, and obviously what is intolerable is the deaths of American lives. So I put a proposal together at a meeting I had recently, suggesting a way around that South African government is not an enemy of the United States, and proposed certain recommendations, which I submitted to the president's office, that could avoid the catastrophic economic consequences of not doing anything. But nothing has happened, and
Yeah, this is the
unless
story though of South Africa. There's all the trade negotiations going on at the moment. All the news from our side tells us that South Africa itself isn't actually engaging with the Trump administration proactively in order to stave off any of the economic consequences. Can we come back to some of this? So you mentioned, let's rewind some of it and just go through some of the details. So you mentioned that you were able to find some evidence that South Africa knew about the October 7th incident before it happened. Can I ask you what that evidence looks like?
well, I can't give up. The intelligence itself is highly sensitive. But what I can unequivocally stated that evidence exists that confirms that. Now, there are intelligence agencies out there. I know the U.S. Department of Justice intelligence, as well as the Israeli intelligence, are well aware of what that evidence is. I'm not party to what the next step is going to be in the collation, but inevitably, an application will have to be brought to the International Court of Justice for its dismissal on these very grounds, at which time that evidence will be presented. But it goes far. The evidence that was suggested to me is far more serious than that. It includes the United Nations involvement in that collaboration, agents within the United Nations, which is a concern that the US government's had all along.
No,
So yes,
let's go into that section. I know you mentioned obviously this would be used in order to effectively, should we say, dismiss the application, but there is obviously a more insidious part of the entire suggestion that South Africa knew, and that is that to a degree that makes South Africa almost complicit or a co-conspirator to commit the October 7th massacre, because if they knew about it, they'd been told, would imply that they had pre-advanced meetings about it and then discussed what the relevant outcome of that would be. Now, the suggestion would probably be that that would have occurred with DIRCO, that's our Department of International Relations.
The International Relations Department of the South African government. All roads lead to that particular section of the South African government, without a doubt.
So that was Pandor's department, and there's a lot of suggestion at the moment that Pandor's department, I mean, she's not the minister in that department anymore, although she still has a heavy hand in it. That department, there's a lot of suggestions coming out of South Africa at the moment that it's incredibly Iranian aligned. Now, some of the suggestions as to why that is because there's let's call it a conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory at this point in time, also pushed forward by Helen Zille, who's one of the leaders of the Democratic Alliance, the official opposition, suggested that Iran had effectively paid the ANC's bills because the ANC was effectively bankrupt, and that this was the price for paying their bills. Is there much credence in that, or is that still a conspiracy theory?
No, absolutely. One doesn't want to have to join the dots in this exercise, but yes, Pandor's close relationship and Lamola, he was then the Minister of Justice, is now the head of DIRCO, have made no secret of their close arrangement and alliance with Hamas and with Iran, which on the face of it, one's perfectly entitled to do. They are a sovereign state, but it's the alienation of the American people, and it's the murdering of their citizens, and it's the fatwas against the president that are way and beyond any expression of diplomatic selection. It's you are effectively declaring war against the United States of America by these actions.
But also, South Africa likes to say that it has this international position where it's like the darling of the world, right? Because it's staved off apartheid and there was no civil war, and look how it is from this moral authority. How can it claim a moral authority if it was complicit in the murder of innocents?
Well. This is the light at the end of the tunnel that's hurtling down towards the country at the moment. You must understand that if the application to the ICJ is withdrawn on these technical grounds, it will be hugely embarrassing to the South African government itself and its position that it places itself as a moral authority. But over and above that, there are consequences, and this is what the message has not seemed to arrived in South Africa at the moment. And that's the worrying issue, is that there are consequences and they are coming over and above the financial consequences of trade and over and above the financial consequences to the economy of sanctions on government debt, which affect South African banks themselves, because quite a few South African banks hold South African government debt. Which they will not be allowed to do so if they want to maintain their chapters in trading in the UK and the EU and the US, which many of the South African banks are. That'll be an end to that if the sanctions are implemented, because the United States and His Majesty's government will have to insist on that. The banking charters in worldwide will be removed. The implications are beyond frightening. But the message has not yet sunk. I read that article from President Ramaphosa, I think it was a Daily Mail, where he appeared bemused or not being able to comprehend what they'd done to bring this level of American ire against the South African government. Well, from what my experience has been here, and that's hence the brief to the security arrangements last week to Ambassador Stevens as the American ambassador to the UK, these issues can no longer be ignored. Either South Africa must address them. So I said to the parties interested in the Americans, how long have I got to allow me to convince the South African government to address these areas of such egregious actions by America? So they said 6 weeks. There's no time left. Now, the accountability of this extends, as I said earlier, personally to the president himself. If there's new legislation passed a couple of weeks ago in the US Supreme Court of Appeal that allows victims of terrorism to claim in an American court damages. The issues of jurisdiction no longer apply. So President Ramaphosa can be sued in an American court if it's confirmed that he knew about the attack before it happened, and continued with the policies that are government policy interests that were a threat to the security of the United States of America, which the killing of those 47 American citizens clearly is. Now, something has to be done, and has to be done very quickly. There seems an attitude that this legislation that's going to allow these sanctions to be implemented has still got a long way to go through the American political system. But they mistake the fact that of these other issues, of the personal accountability of the president himself, which he appears at the moment not to be aware of. But so those are the two issues. When one looks at this relationship,
is it though that he isn't aware of it, or he doesn't care? Because there was news that he was at a BRICS conference on 16th and 17th of July, and during that conference, at this BRICS conference, he was lobbying members of the international community to sanction Israel. All this at the same time at which the news is that the negotiations currently ongoing with the Americans is not doing very well in terms of AGOA. A lot of them are they suggesting it's due to what they're calling sovereign issues. So sovereign issues are basically them saying they don't like certain things happening in South Africa, and South Africa says it's our free will to do what we want. South Africa obviously being the ANC, And the other issue at the moment is, as you'll be aware, as of right now, the Iranian ambassador is in South Africa attempting to strengthen Iranian ties between South Africa and South Africa, um, which is odd because South Africa has no strategic or beneficial trade with Iran. So where that comes from, don't know. But apparently the ANC seems to be all over Iran like a hot rash. So is it a situation that he doesn't know, or is it more a situation that he doesn't care? And by his words, he would prefer to trade with the BRICS partners, not the Western blocs.
Well, that is clearly the perception. But two things. One is this African government that supporting that view is not the South African government of national unity. I don't see the DA's voice or Freedom Front's voice or
BA.
all the other parties form the South African government now. The African National Congress can do what it wants,
Mm.
but it cannot speak on behalf of the government of national unity for the simple reason that they lost the last election. So you can bang your drum as much as you want on policies that affect the ANC, but those policies don't automatically become the policies of the new government of national unity without Parliament playing its natural role. In fact, the argument hasn't been presented yet whether the continuation of the case against the ICJ presented by the previous government is still supported by the current government. These
Mm.
are logical issues any normal democracy would deal with in the normal course of day. So yes, you're quite right about the signaling coming from DIRCO, but DIRCO is not the South African government. It's a division of the
You
South
might want
African
to tell
government.
that to the ANC. Like, I'm not sure they agree with you on that. At the end of the day, I think the Helen Zille tried to get some involvement in Durka, and it was the one department that nearly sunk the GNU negotiations because the news was that Durka would refuse to allow any GNU participation. And then we've heard frequently out of the ANC, specifically, Fikile Mbalula, who's said numerous times, he's the Secretary General, basically the CEO of the ANC. He said numerous times that the ANC's foreign policy remains that of the foreign policy of the country because it was set by the ANC, and the ANC, according to him, is the largest party, and so therefore it remains the foreign policy. And we're not seeing any of the other GNU parties pushing back with any form of, should we say,
Well, we have.
meaningfulness.
I think it was last week, Emma Powell, who is the shadow foreign relations DA representative, resigned
She
because
did,
of
yes.
harassment and bullied.
From Durka.
Yeah, you see, and that is a message to the U.S. Administration
Mm.
that we're at war with you. We support people who've got a fatwa against President Trump. We support people that kill American citizens, and the consequences of that are of no interest to us. But it is an interest to the people of South Africa. The 60-odd million people that live there are going to find, when sanctions hit, that the cost of living is going to be, the economy is going to be destroyed. It's going to a long lot to claw its way back. But if that's not bad enough, if you don't understand that concept, then the president must be made to realize he faces the risk of being sued personally. So the point of these sanctions is the word punitive. And the word punitive is linked to the word egregious. Those two words describe that these are actions that are meant to hurt and strike and be effective. For him to be sued for $400 million, which I'm not quite sure how they came to that sum, but is estimated at his entire personal worth, would be a powerful message to world leaders as to whom to engage with and not to engage. But understand that whether you support the South African foreign policy or you support American policy, whatever, there is no American president that's got nothing to do with President Trump in the history of America that could ever allow American citizens to be targets and to be murdered with impunity.
Mm.
It's not going to escape their attention, and there are going to be repercussions. Now, as per my recommendation, there are ways of addressing this issue. So that's on the Ramaphosa side. But the other side of the debate, which is entirely how I got involved, is on the application to the ICJ. In other words, the corruption of international courts. Now, that is intolerable if the international rule of law is going to survive. Now, a week ago, you just mentioned open discussions with South Africa, but there was a Hague meeting with South Africa, again leading the anti-Israel lobby group, but using the argument that Israel was a threat to international, what's going on in Gaza is a threat to international rule of law. But the corruption of the International Court of Justice and the corruption of the ICC, you must remember, the ICC application was brought within a month after the attack of October the 7th. Yeah. And within 2 months, the ICC application. Now, that's remarkable dexterity to any legal mind for those of us that do know that the wheels of justice grind slowly. That's not even that's a remarkable feat, that it should appear out of the mist with such speed for the applications to be successful. It implies through common sense alone that there was preparations and instructions issued prior to the attack of October the 7th. Common sense and common logic to anybody who understands how the legal system works would understand that. So the evidence itself is I believe, self-explanatory, and the two other, I mean, for example, the Israeli intelligence, if they knew enough about, had the ability to blow up Hamas phones, they certainly knew what was on those phones before blew them up. But this issue is not limited to President Ramaphosa. My security brief was to Sweeney, because our concern, and this was submitted a year ago, when I got involved because he'd fired a member of the Scottish Parliament who was the whip for the SNP for making a pro-Israeli comment, that Ramaphosa might not be the only international world leader that was aware of the attack before it happened. But that truth will come out. I left that question with him because it was regarding Scottish ministers. So he never responded, but it was enough to be of concern for Trump's security in his visit, and that's why part of the reason you saw 5,000 police officers in Ayrshire as he played on his in Turnberry and now in Aberdeen. These issues are being taken very seriously from my interactions with American agencies and people I meet every day here that come from Washington, for the simple reason of the magical game of golf. Scotland is a mecca for golf, and every American that has any influence and enjoys the game of golf is currently in Scotland. As part of it, and it has a long history, and I also promote where I can tourism to South Africa to support the economy. Well, which golfing, hopefully next year we'll have 2 tours to South Africa.
If we're not sanctioned up the wazoo, then yeah, hopefully we will.
But the point is, Byron, these issues that you're not reading in the press are issues that have huge economic significance and profound implications for the future of South African politics. And personally, the ANC appears to think that there will be no accountability. Well, the accountability is coming home soon, and era than if President Ramaphosa is personally sued for damages for the deaths of American citizens. There are 4 cases already underway in America for damages claims varying from $1 billion to more by hostage families of hostages that were murdered. So there's no surprise. It's nothing new. It's happening as we speak. But what's new is the fact that President Ramaphosa's name is now mentioned, and it would be my recommendation that that is dealt with as soon as possible, not just for him personally, but to address the issue that the majority of South Africans, I believe, are not Muslims, and the majority of South Africans are indeed Christians.
That's correct. But South Africa is very much currently underneath an Islamic ideological, let's call it capture. And a lot of that, as you rightly said, although it started this interview, all of it spreads to Durka. You know, Durka appears to be the department leading a lot of this. It's very obvious that it's being spearheaded by Pando and Lamola, which I think is why two of the names that were heavily highlighted by the Americans as being potential parties who would be sanctioned, one of them was Pando.
Well, I think that much is clearly in the public domain, but you've seen the reactions to the rejection of South Africa trying to appoint an ambassador to the United States. I believe they still don't have one. No. Something has, and that's my role where such as it is, if I can assist in promoting South Africa's interests and in any way securing some kind of relief. But on the issue of the application to the ICJ, that I'm afraid is out of my hands. It's going to happen anyway. And it has to happen because international law is not a suicide pact. And any suggestion that the international law is going to support Hamas is forcing a suicide pact on Israel. And that is not going to happen. It will not happen. And America has clearly said in unequivocal terms, they won't allow it to happen. Now, it doesn't matter if you're pro-Muslim or pro-Hamas or pro-whatever, that's the facts as they exist. And the 12-day war was an expression of that fact. Now, South Africa is not China. It hasn't got the ability to wage war with the largest country, most powerful country in the world. And it is an absurd recommendation that it should even try. But why it would want to try remains a mystery. As you suggest, it's Turco-driven and Iranian linked. But that doesn't express, as far as I'm aware, the will of the South African people. And it does not express, certainly, I saw yesterday that Keir Starmer has requested intervention in Gaza, and if it doesn't happen, the recognition of the Palestinian state. These issues are disturbing, and the plight of the Gazans are disturbing. And if we can anyway relieve that plight whilst bringing peace to the Middle East, and particularly on the issue here of hostages, I repeatedly asked President Ramaphosa if he could
just for reference, we're on to our last minute.
Okay. Naledi Pandor herself recommended the release of hostages. I'm calling on the South African government to fulfill that promise.
Well, I do thank you very much for your time. I really have enjoyed talking to you. There's some horrendous news out of here. Consequences will be felt, but I do really thank you for taking your time to meet with me, and hopefully something positive happens out of all of this.
Thank you, Byron, and thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, man. Take it easy. Cheers. Bye.